Hi everyone. Welcome back to Spirit Lounge. Hope you're doing well and having a great day. So today's subject I'm going to be talking about is forgetting. Slightly related, it has a connection to the near-death experience video I did last week, or published last week. And this one's about forgetting. And what I mean by forgetting is this notion that when we come into our lives, we forget everything we were before. We forget ourselves and who we truly are. We come into life with absolutely no conception or knowledge of what we were or what we are, where we came from, where we're going. We just come into this life and in a blank slate, in other words, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, or etheric, and energetic. The question I'm going to pose and I'm going to discuss here is, are we truly really forgetting, or are we really disconnecting? And I'll explain what I mean by that. So from my own perception, again, I'll repeat this is my perception I'm passing on to you as food for thought, for which you consider and to take for what you will, as are all my videos and everything that I've written in the book as well, in the corner. So let's go from the established view that we come into life, and it goes into this kind of death traps that we discussed in the near-death experience video of last week, where there's this portal that can be presented to people where you go into and it gives you a false illusion of light, and then you suddenly end up in a dark place, zapped, and your memory is completely erased. You're into a blank slate and you're forced down into recycling back into earth, into a body of and leading a similar life of what you did before, whether it be authoritarianism, hate fueled, or free will and love fueled, whichever. It's kind of no choice, you just recycled over and over again. We've talked about that last video, we're not going to talk about that in this one. But the established notion is that we come into life, and the New Age philosophy and the spiritual thinking around it is that we come into life and we have no recollection of what we were before, or where we were, the lives we've lived, where we come from, our infinite being, our infinite selves, our spiritual selves at all. We just drop into life and we have a blank slate. And the reason we have that blank slate is that so we can learn. If we knew everything about ourselves and we had open connections, and we understood where we came from, any past life memories, anything outside of just the blank slate wouldn't serve us, and that we wouldn't learn anything if we knew anything about ourselves from the past. Now that's the established view. That's the reason why for forgetting, it's called forgetting. In other words, forgetting where we are as we drop through into physical life, into these avatars which we animate, and our energy and auric fields and the various bodies that people talk about, energy bodies, mental bodies, within and in and around this avatar, or just completely, because it's all one, it's all energy anyway. We forget everything that we are. Well, I'm going to give an alternative perception on this, and I'm going to say it's a bit of both. It's a little bit of forgetting, but is it really forgetting, or is it more disconnecting? Now, when we come into life, it's proven in science is that the moment from conception and when we are in our mother's womb, everything our parents do, everything we hear through the womb, that we sense, the emotions of our mother, the habits of our mother, things that go on in the external world and that where we are energetically connected, remember, affects the baby within the womb. So the moment of conception, everything around it affects the child. And that includes anything that the parent also has indoctrinated in themselves as energetic dogma, indoctrination, mental thinking, perceptions, straitjackets through life that they've established within themselves, and how they perceive themselves. it all gets cascaded down to some degree into the unborn child. Energetically. It does. It's proven in science that things do affect us before we're born, that our parents engage in mental, emotional, physical, energetic or etherical. It affects us. And then we're born into life. Now, I'm going to make this statement that we actually don't forget. We don't remember either, but we don't forget. What actually happens when the moment of life, and then I'll explain why we come to this position of forgetting, is actually we go through a process of disconnection. When we're born into life, the veil between this physical world and the infinite state from which we entered into this place, into this 3D realm of physical and human reality and the experience that we came for a purpose, for an intention, and the family that we've chosen and the environment we've chosen, and we'll talk about that another time. That veil between us, between the avatar that we've been born into this physical world, when we take our first breath and cry our first cry, is transparent. It's hardly there. There's not really a veil, and that thin line, that golden thread between us and our core in the infinite state always exists and persists through life from the moment of conception to the moment to death, after death. It's persistent. But as infants, we don't really understand, because we enter into the mind state. We see things, and we don't really understand that. So a baby or an infant, a young toddler, can see things, and it's proven many, many times, sees things, perceives things in the corner of a room, unable to articulate itself to its parents, because we often can't speak, just gargle and cry and eat in those years. But we are open. We have an open connection to our home, to our source. We just don't understand it. We now can't articulate it at that age. But our eyes are open. We can see through the veil. We can see things around us that adults cannot see. Those older than us, and even 10 years older than us when we're born, cannot see. It's because when we're born, we are connected. We are connected to our source as openly as we are, to be honest, when we pass and leave this avatar and enter into that infinite state again, and we rediscover what we are. When we're born, that exists in a baby and a young infant. And I've had experience of this, and you can prove it to yourselves through your own experiences, and I'll give you a couple of examples. I've been around children who I've observed and close to me when they were born. I've seen them cry, and then I've seen them suddenly stop crying and look up in the corner and stare at something. And then when that something's gone, they started to cry again. I've been around infants who have told me about lives that they've had before. I've seen this, I've personally experienced it, I've tested this theory of mine out myself. I met a guy a few years ago in Arizona, really nice life regressionist, and in the past, and I had a long chat with him, and he told me a story once that he was in a car with a 6-year-old nephew of his, and he decided to test what he felt was true and reality about reincarnational life and our connection to our past, our present, and our futures infinitely all of the time. So he asked this 6-year-old nephew of his that was sitting in the car as they were driving, and said, what were you before? What do you think you were before you were who you are today? Just a random question out of nowhere. And the child answered back and described a life of what he was before. Just like it was a normal conversation. There's nothing strange to him at all. And it ended there. It was a very short conversation. He described this to me. And other experiences he's had, particularly some of these life regression stories, life regressions and past life regressions he's done on people. A really nice guy. I hope he's well because he's going through some illness right now. But what I decided to do is I decided to do this to somebody else that I know. This young child, this 6-year-old that I know. And just random conversation. But I said, what do you think you were before you came? Before you were so-and-so? And the child basically replied to me and told me that they were a boy of a certain culture in this country. And that's the life they had before they were the person that they were then. Just immediately upon asking the question, that response came from a 6-year-old child. But then what that child said to me was totally random and did not expect. And the child said to me, "Oh, yeah, and you've been around a really, 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 really long time," as a child would say. And I just looked and thought, "Oh, really?" And says, "Yeah, you've been around a really, really long time." And I know where that came from, and I didn't question that because I know other things around that statement that child made, but I wasn't expecting it from that child at all. And the conversation just ended there. Didn't go on. It was just one question. But what that was proving to me, and that I've always felt to be true, and what is my feeling and has always been, is that we do not actually forget. What happens to us is that we disconnect. And through disconnection, we forget. It's through disconnection that we forget. And what is that disconnection? Well, that disconnection is that we disconnect from that golden thread. It's always there, but our perceptions are totally starts to be disconnected from birth, from the womb onwards. And as we traverse life, that connection to our golden thread to the eternal, that open veil of sight beyond sight, we move away from. The moment we conceive and enter into physical being, into this avatar, we disconnect. The speed of which we disconnect depends upon our environment, depends upon the dogma of our parents, our culture, the religions we're born into, the social systems and behaviors, rituals and beliefs and doctrines that we're born into and instilled into us. The education system that moves us into mind and into our bodies. The system that we live in, into the human experience, which forces us to identify with our physical bodies only and moves us into left brain thinking. However intense that is from the moment of birth through your formative years will dictate whether or not that disconnection is fast, or if it's slow, or if it's or some degree of its openness is maintained. Through that disconnection, through that enforcing of ourselves into our physical states, disconnecting from what we were at birth, this infinite being entering into space of adventure and mystery with open eyes, open senses, thin veil, beautiful strong connection to the divine, to our source, to our infinite knowing of self, but unable to articulate it to those older, because we're just babies, just infants, but we can see. The same as an animal can see. An animal doesn't get indoctrinated. That's what it's always able to see. Humans are indoctrinated and they stop being able to see. We become blind to ourselves. We become blind because of our environment. We become blind because of our mental egoism and intellectualism and our forced centering into the body and the mind, and then into established notions of belief, doctrines, religions, deities, demigods, whatever it is. It goes on and on and on. Into cults, into believing science is the only form of truth and the only access to true nature. It's not true. It's the disconnection that we have is forcing us through our own egos that we end up developing, and we dismiss everything as mystery, as nonsense, as doesn't exist. That's why we forget. Yes, there is a reason. The rest that we do know we're going to forget when we enter life. We enter life knowing this is going to happen. Remember, we don't come here not knowing the theatre in which we're entering. We know the theatre we're entering. It's intentional. We understand what systems exist here, the indoctrination that exists here, the programming that exists here, the moving into body and mind only that exists here, the parental dogma that's imposed on us that exists here. I mean, how many people out there, how many of us have had parents that tell us that this isn't real, that isn't real, stop believing in this and stop believing in that. This is true, that's not true. Everything from a child, from the moment we're born, we're programmed, we're forced into belief systems until we're old enough to maybe take the free will decision to question those things that we're being taught. Most don't, the majority will not. Some do. And maybe you guys are watching these videos and others reading books of the similar subjects. Maybe you're looking for a greater answer. And I applaud you for that. It takes a brave person to do something different from the sheep and the cattle out there, which most of us are becoming mentally, if not physically, and emotionally as well. So that's the disconnection. And through that disconnection, I feel, is that the majority of the forgetting happens. Yeah, we're not going to remember everything. Of course not. There is a degree of need to not be absolutely open when we enter life, because it wouldn't serve a purpose then. But we have that open connection to be able to remember what we need to remember. So what we need to do is reconnect and remember. We need to reconnect and remember. That is what these videos that I create, the book I've written, and the videos of many others, and the books that they write, the workshops that they have, the many things, esoteric, metaphysical, spiritual out there, the trueness, not the almost cult-like new age that's going on these days. The journey is yourselves, it's within. To reconnect with what we've disconnected from is that journey into self. It's that journey into the true being of our true nature, which will open your sight beyond sight. And that's not through your eyes. It's the hidden, energetic lens that sits within. It's to open the energetic book of knowledge and truth, and that is seated within your soul and your heart. And aligning the trinity of the mind, the soul, and the heart to work together to open these avenues up to where you came from and what you knew and what you've always known and connected to all along. That we've suppressed deeply as that dimly lit flame in the deep recesses of our being, that barely, in the absolute majority, barely sees the light of day, but in some it will. And it's openness and try it before you deny it, is what I say. Keep open in all ways and Give it a go. I challenge you. I challenge anyone who's dismissive on watching these videos to try it before you deny it. Use persistence and faith. I'm not even asking anyone to pray. You will end up doing that if you persist long enough, through your own volition and your own knowing. But you will. And that's where your disconnection, that's where your connection, your reconnection will be established, and you'll start to understand yourself. You'll start to understand where we come from. We will. And then once your path is up, once you reconnect with that path, you'll start reconnecting with your purpose, which we're disconnected from as well. When we disconnect from what is, we always seek our purpose and we never find it. Because the purpose is not a material one. I guarantee you that. There'll be other material experiences that we have which will be part of our purpose, but the ultimate one is expansion and reconnection to what we decide to omit, and what's omitted through the false nature of this experience have to return to. We are all infinite beings, and this is going to be apparent whether we wish to reconnect with them in life. We're going to rediscover them after life. There's no such thing really, everything's life. So remember who you are, remember why this forgetting actually happens. There is a degree, of course, it needs to. You wouldn't come into life with an absolute. If you came into this life space with absolutely, where there was no system which enforced you to challenge yourself, to rediscover yourself, you'd come here and you wouldn't learn anything. Challenge wouldn't be a challenge because you dismiss it all knowing because it's just not. You know it wouldn't mean anything because you know what your true self is. You are, through proxy of coming here, forgetting, and have the need of forgetting, through the proxy of being here, through the fact that when you come here, it's imposed upon you. That's the challenge. That's the irony of it. Is that you're forced into it, which gives you the challenge to rediscover it, which is part of the purpose of why you come. It feeds itself, it's a purposeful, intentional reason. People will come into your path as you go through this life if you reconnect with your path. Reconnect with the inner self. You don't even have to follow it spiritually like a guru. You don't need gurus, by the way, and I've mentioned that many times. You just need to enter the private, personal journey of your own. And if you need and you ask for things to be brought to your awareness and to discover the trueness of what is around you and beyond, into the space that we truly are, people will come into your life and show you when you're ready, if that's what you seek. But it'll come in when you're in alignment with where you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve. So if you want to remember, reconnect. Because when you reconnect, the infinite opens itself up for rediscovery. And you can find out what you knew when you were a baby, newborn, because those things were available to you when you were born, and they can be available to you now through that journey. Silence, meditation, asking what you think doesn't exist, what we think doesn't exist, which it does. It's always there, listening, waiting for you to engage with it. And the ultimate thing is just recognizing there is a divine one, a God, a source. There is. We're all part of it, fractals of it. We are not gods. We're only gods in that we can create our own experiences and dictate our own futures and our experiences that we embark on through our tens, hundreds or thousand lifetimes or whatever, however many we've had. But we are not the creators of all that is. We are emanations of all that is. So those out there who think we are gods, only within the sphere of our own experiences, our trajectories of our infinite selves, there's free will, and therefore we are gods of our own free will. But we are not the divine source and the true oneness of all that is. We are emanations of it, fractals of it, and part of it. So there's a difference there. That's for me. I don't like it when people say they're gods, because they don't know that. I don't find the difference. They seem to omit the divine oneness of that exists and put themselves above it. There is no above or below. There's just one. But we need to understand what we truly are, to understand our infiniteness and the nature of the word God within our own being. So that's what I wanted to kind of go through. This whole prison planet thing that we heard on the last near-death experience and these death traps, you know, if we never remember anything when we come into life, let's just throw a little scenario out there. If we come into repeated incarnational life, which we do, and we go through life in mind and body and ego, identity, dogma, doctrines, whatever it is, everything that we've got. There's so much out there in this world, in this human experience you can indulge in and obsess about for your entire lifespan if you wanted, to distract you from the true reality of what you are and the reconnection of what we're here for. If we never do that, if we never ever engage in it, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and we just end up cycling ourselves in and out of this planet, in and out of this human experience, if that's what we choose to remain in until we've cycled ourselves out of the need for rebirth, then this is a prison planet. But it's because we make it one for ourselves. And the more dense we become in life, and the more myopic we decide to focus our energies on and perceptions on, the moment we depart from physical existence into that momentary state of, for some, confusion, you might open portals for yourself. Who knows? Anything's possible. So we can create our own prison planet if we want. We can create our own recycling through choice if we want. If we never do anything in life other than just live the physical one and bound ourselves by just what we hear on the TV, on the radio, and white suits and suits and white jackets, white coated scientists, if that's all we want to think is real, is what other people are saying is the only reality, which changes constantly without looking externally at other things and dismissing what we truly are. Well, they can keep recycling in and out of life experiences, and they can feel like prisons then for us. So it's up to us. It's free will. Try the journey before you deny its existence, and before we deny the things that people state are real, and it's all felt. Remember, you never know it through the mind. You'll only be able to perceive it through the spirit and the heart. The mind merely helps you understand it, process it, but it's not the master. So give it a try. Reconnect as far as you feel fit and driven to do, and just be open, completely open. Persist and speak to what we believe doesn't exist, and be patient persistence, and see what happens. So I'm glad, I hope you've enjoyed it. So I'll close this video off now, and please like, subscribe, or the alert bell to be notified at any time, the moments I publish new videos in the future. And it's been great talking to you all, and please leave comments if you're so inclined. I do like seeing those, particularly those with questions. I like those because it inspires more videos. I like to answer questions, and people to challenge actually a lot. It's useful to challenge. It helps me as well as it helps those who post the questions. So have a great day, and speak to you all again soon, and love to you all. Thank you. Bye bye.